Hello and namaste everyone. Welcome to Journey to Wilderness, the voice episode ma. र voice episode मा चाहिँ हामीहरूले तपाईहरुको माझ राष्ट्रिय अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय herpetologist, conservationist, ornithologist अरुको चाहिँ एउटा सर्ट इन्टरभ्यु लिएर हामी प्रस्तुत हुने गरेका छौं र यो एपिसोडमा चाहिँ हामीले German herpetologist Frank Tillack लाई चाहिँ हाम्रो द भोइस एपिसोडमा निमन्त्रणा गरेका थियौं र उहाँले आफ्नो नेपाल बसाइको क्रममा नेपालमा भेट्नु भएका नयाँ प्रजातिका चाहिँ सर्प, लिजर्ड्स, reptiles एन्ड amphibians भन्छ ती कुराहरुको विषयलाई लिएर चाहिँ हामीले द भोइस को एपिसोड तयार गरेका छौं। उहाँको एपिसोड सुरु हुनु अगाडि म उहाँको बारेमा थोरै जानकारी दिन चाहन्छु यहाँहरुलाई। Frank Tillack is a renowned German herpetologist based at the Museum for Naturkunde in Berlin. त्यो म्युजियम चाहिँ तपाईको म्युजियम अफ नेचुरल हिस्ट्री म्युजियम इन बर्लिन बर्लिनमा चाहिँ छ। उहाँ चाहिँ herpetologist र कलेक्सन म्यानेजर हुनुहुन्छ र त्यस्तै गरी उहाँको बारेमा भन्नुपर्दा he oversees one of Europe's top 3 herpetology collection and among the world's 10 largest, containing roughly 2600 types specimen across 1900 species. यो रिसर्च गेटमा चाहिँ उहाँले आफ्नो कलेक्सनको बारेमा चाहिँ अपलोड गर्नुभएको थियो र त्यसैको आधारमा म उहाँको जानकारी गर्दैछु। Frank has authored or co-authored numerous taxonomic revision and description, contributing to at least 6 new species names. For example, he described a new Boiga species in Western Ghats of India in 2019 and worked on nomenclature and taxonomy of snakes and frogs in Africa and Asia. The snake, Oligodon tilaki, a kukuri snake from Western India, was named after him in 2022 to honor his contribution in herpetofauna systematics. His work includes careful management of historical specimens, such as rediscovering and classifying century-old samples, for example, monitor lizards in Berlin collections. About his publications and authorship, his extensive publication record spans multiple zoological journals, including taxa, herpetology, and zoosystematics and evolution, covering topics from species rediscovery and phylogenetic reviews. And about his co-author pivotal works, including 2009 revision of Oligodon species from Sumatra and adjacent regions, 2021 classification on nomenclature of Culiver monticos, also called contributed checklist and descriptive studies and dwarf snakes, Arabian genus in taxa and vertebrate zoology. We prepared some questions for him, so let's hear his answers. Thank you. Keep watching.
My very close friend, which was living near to Berlin, because he developed a keen interest in keeping reptiles during that time. It was in the early 1980s, and he showed me a book with some very nice images of terraria kept by a very prominent reptile keeper to that time, and I found this such interesting. But I also developed the interest in keeping live reptiles, and I was very fast go to snakes. Then I met some expert of his hobby in Berlin, which kept African species, and I could get from them some captive bred species, and started in 1984 first time to keep African egg eaters, so a very specialized snake species exclusively feeding on bird eggs, in my home flat in Berlin. So I was involved with a museum in Berlin first time in around 1990, when I came back from my first field trip to Central Asia, especially to Turkmenistan. I've been there 2 times in spring, searching for mostly reptiles, especially snakes. And I had this contact because I was already during that time a member of a terrarium association of Berlin, and we had some exchange with the same club in Moscow. So the Moscow colleagues invited me to go with them for a field trip to Turkmenistan. And when I came back, I was not really able to identify everything that we photographed in Turkmenistan, and the public libraries had not all the specialized literature, so I had to go to the Department of Herpetology, and the curator during that time, Dr. Rainer Günther, so he hardly invited me to come with him to get access to the specialized herpetological department's collection. And during that time, very quickly, I also developed interest in taxonomy and nomenclature of reptiles. So the role as a collection manager mostly as a technical job. So we have to take care on the collections under our care. So it includes the department where I'm working in a number of about 150,000 wet preserved specimens and about 3,000 dry specimens, which includes skulls, skeletons, and parts of dried specimens. And beside the care of these collections, we have to guide all national and international visitors. So we support other departments of our own museum in case we have to supply some specimens for special exhibitions on prominent collectors or on special regions. So additional to that, I am responsible for the collection care labs where all visitors have to work, because in case of that material, we're talking about dangerous goods, because everything is stored in ethanol, and this requires some special environment to work with the stuff. So everything what has to be examined has to be taken out of a collection in this collection care labs, and there's space for about 4 researchers or other interested people like journalists or sometimes artists who like to draw these specimens for a special kind of art or publications. They have to use these laboratories. Beside of the care of his labs, I'm responsible for all the national and international loans. This includes the income of specimens, which are necessary for our own research, which we borrow from institutions from outside, as well as the loans we send out throughout the world. This was actually an accident.
Oh, it was accident.
So, as I told you before, my first field experience I had in Central Asia, and I found this really amazing. But I thought that it's really worth to continue the work in Asia. So, and In 1990, I applied for a visa to Far East Russia. And during that time, it was still some kind of socialistic country, and you need a personal invitation from a person which has a resident in Far East Asia. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting for this invitation, because without this, I couldn't apply for a visa. So, and 1 week before I had to start, because I had fixed holidays, the visa invitation still not received me. And then I opened geographic atlas, closed my eyes and put the finger on it, and I landed on Nepal. And then I checked if it's possible, and during that time it was possible to get a visa at arrival for 2 weeks, and we simply booked a flight and go to Nepal together with this close friend who introduced me in this pet keeping. So we two guys landed here on Nepal in 1990 and had a short trip to the Kaski region and get the first impression, and was so amazed from everything, from the nature, from the country, from the people, that I could never stop to come here again.
So it was not an intentional visit.
No. It was really by accident.
It was by accident. Like
Yeah.
you just close your eyes,
Yes.
put the map, and
Yeah.
you just put your finger on the map.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Oh, there are so many stories to tell, but probably the most impressed one was a very recent one, because since about 20 years I know of a venomous snake species here in Nepal that has since many years no name. And there's a specimen collected in the 1960s, which was collected by Swan. It was a prophylactic field experienced person who collected for the Color Academy in San Francisco. And in the 1960s, he collected this venomous snake, deposited them, and then it was forgotten for many years. And in 1977, a Swiss herpetologist, Eugen Kramer, published a paper about the general snake fauna of the Gandaki region, and he included the single specimen which was collected in Semigaon to this list and named it Protobotrops jadoni. And I borrowed the specimen from the Color Academy to Berlin 20 years ago, and after examination I realized that it is not jadoni but something else undescribed. And because it was only a single specimen, I refused from describing it as new, because usually you need a little bit more material to make a proper description. And then we tried many years to force someone to visit this locality again, but it's not happened, and not further specimen was recorded from a region. Afterward, this same species popped up in the eastern edge of Annapurna region, and in the internet some colleagues posted some images of a species killed by locals, and I asked them to go there again to get some images of live specimen, but they couldn't, for different reasons. It not happen. And in 2023 we decided, after our trip to northwestern India, to come here for a week and try to visit this location and find the specimen. And we went on a 12 hours exhausting drive to the southern Manaslu area, went over the hanging bridge to Philim, slept one night, go the next night, and got it in the next night. I will provide you some images of this live specimen. the identification of differences between sometimes closely related species can be really challenging. So you need a lot of experience, many years of not only field work but also curational work, and you have to see a lot of specimens of a so-called same species. And to that you need a lot of data, and of course because of many different types of analysis you can tell apart them by statistics, but sometimes the differences in the morphology are quite striking, but not obviously visible. So we have to count many different characters, and then you will find the differences.
Because for example, I know green pit in the context of the snake, I can say it's a green pit viper.
Yeah.
Because most people know the common name as a green pit viper, but it has another names also, like it has other subspecies, you know.
This is a
that's why I asked
this is a good example, because this is a very difficult question for this kind of snakes, because these species are very cryptic, especially in the Himalayan and northern Indian subcontinent region. So we have there probably at least 4 green pit vipers, which are at first glance not possible to tell apart. There are some main characters, very special on the front of the head, where you can distinguish in 2 groups, and the other characters are internal. So you need to know also the shape and the structure of a hemipenis. So this is mostly not possible to distinguish a living specimen.
So it means just at the first glance we cannot identify the subspecies because it looks same.
Similar, same, yeah. So during the past decades, there's a strong development in the research of Nepalese herpetofauna. It starts with some Westerners, especially Americans and German scientists, but in the 1980s, also starting with the research of Professor Karan Bahadur, there was the research of herpetofauna was implemented here in Nepal itself. And because Tribhuvan University, also together with Karan Shah, had so many students with a keen interest in amphibians and reptiles, so there's a good development, and the young generation of herpetologists is very interested to continue this work here in Nepal. So during the last years, a lot of very interesting peer-reviewed, really good papers are published, and very prominent, high-ranking international rated papers. So in regard of pit vipers, the challenges are that I personally have only limited time to make field work here, so we rely in this case of many informations of native scientists from Nepal. And since the herpetofauna is so diverse, usually the Nepalese scientists cannot specialize on a certain group. So we have to look for geckos, colobreed snakes, and turtles, and amphibians. So it's probably difficult to focus exclusively for 2-3 years only on a special pit viper topic. So that's why the information what we get about these kind of snakes, it's only randomly. And it takes a lot of time to bring all these things together to get an image what really happened in this snake of group of snakes.
So, in your research, how many pit vipers do we have in Nepal?
And Nepal, let me count. So it starts with Gurube or Andosrapa, so it's Ovophis monticola. Then you have at least 2 green pit vipers of genus Trimerosaurus. That means it's septentrionalis. And the middle mountain areas, maybe up to 2.7 thousand meters. And there's another one which occurs more in the lowland, like in the Chitwan area. So, and then you have at least one species of the genus Protobotrops, which is originally described from Sikkim, with known distribution in southern Tibet and in Bhutan. And this species was also now reported from the southern Manaslu and a few days ago from us in eastern Nepal. So I was really happy to join this group. This was initiated with research by Santosh Bhattarai, and because he has a keen interest in this group of geckos. And I collected, I observed these Pseudodactylus in 1997 in the Gandaki region, in the Kaski district, in Biritanti and in Nordanda, and made photographs. And during that time, I couldn't identify them, and it became obvious that these are new species. And then, with images hiding for many years until the group around Santosh Bhattarai made some field trips, collected the same specimen, additional to that 2 new species, and they also reviewed the already described species from western Nepal and from the Ilam district. And this was the group of species we reviewed in the first complete overview of a genus Pseudodactylus in Nepal. And the main goal of this paper was that it was the first genetic phylogeny included. So it was an integrative paper which included morphology, genetics, distribution, and ecology of all known Pseudodactylus species from Nepal. The preserved specimens are the major basic to do taxonomic research. Without preserved material in collections, comparison of probably new discovered species is impossible, because otherwise you had to rely on photos or on descriptions only. And many species which you need to compare with your new material is sometimes described 150 or 200 years ago. And during that time, the description were very simple and not much informative. Photos were not available, so sometimes you get maybe a sketch or colored images, but this will never show all necessary traits or characters to compare it with your new material. So you have to rely on preserved specimens, especially on the name-bearing type material, which is distributed throughout the world in many different collections. So this is the basis of every taxonomic research. And since our museum has a long traditional in collection and collecting and keeping these valuable material, so we have a rich collection, especially of this very important type material. And everyone who likes to make a revision of a certain group, which we house some important types, has to compare our type material with our collection and his own material to make a proper publication and description of his own collections. So one of the leading herpetologists, a German-born Professor Wolfgang Wüster, since many years working at the Bangor University in Wales, UK, tried to figure out the type localities of some very prominent cobra species. So the common cobra Naja naja, and he nearly finished a paper about the history of a description and the type material of a species. And he found out that different as thought until now, the type specimen of a common cobra comes not from India but from Sri Lanka. And then he wrote the manuscript and submitted it to a journal, and he couldn't find the type specimen because it was described by Linné based on a drawing by the famous Dutch pharmacist Albertus Seber in a very big volume published in the late 18th century. And only the drawing was known. And the reviewer explained him that in a Berlin museum are parts of his collection. And then he stepped back from the submission and contacted me, and we could identify the type specimen of a common cobra in our collection. So this specimen is preserved at least since nearly 300 years in our vet collection. And this changed the idea about the type locality and the naming of a common cobra. So the common cobra, the name Naja naja, has now the type locality in Sri Lanka and is endemic to Sri Lanka and to the southern and southeastern part of the Indian subcontinent. And all the other specimens which are called common cobra Naja naja on the Indian subcontinent needs a new name, a new scientific name.
Nowadays, we can see lots of videos and photos of Russell vipers in torrid regions.
Yeah.
Because before we didn't know that we have a Russell viper in torrid region, right? And later somebody claimed, but I'm not sure. They in torrid region they said they found a speeding cobra here, and I'm not a herpetologist, or I'm not a specialist because I was so curious, like I tried to search in Google. That's the easiest thing to get the information from me. So I searched there sometime that the common cobra Naja naja means that can like spit venom, but it's not exactly a spitting venom from Africa or in other countries like we used to see.
So
do you know why? Like if somebody found a cobra in torrid region in Nepal, okay, and they said it was spitting a venom, Okay, and we have a Russell vipers now. There's lots of Russell vipers. So why is it now? Like we are having a lot of different kinds of snakes.
All this information popped only up with social media and the internet. Before, it was very difficult to transport this anecdotal information from one person to another. And with all these very common distributed smartphones, everybody can quickly click the specimens or make a video of a behavior of some specimens, which in former times nobody could transmit to someone other. And until a few years ago, it was not reported that you have cobra species in Nepal which are able to spit. It was recorded by Rishi Bara from the Pokhara Nature History Museum, and we published a paper about this behavior in the Russian Journal of Herpetology, and it was the first report of a spitting cobra. It's Naya Kaotia, with a scientific name. First report for Nepal for spitting. Before, it was known for Naya Kaotia only from West Bengal, this behavior.
So it is new for Nepal?
Not the species, but the behavior.
Behavior.
Maybe the locals know it, but they had no possibility to tell them these stories to scientists. I think the biggest problem also for Nepal is destruction of the habitats because of steadily increasing of the population. But this is not only a fact for Nepal, which causes the destruction of the habitats, because you need the area for develop agriculture to feed the population. And this is probably most worse in the lowlands, because this is more easy to develop as in the mountainous areas. And the second problem is most probably the global warming, especially for high elevation species, because they are adapted on a certain climate, and if they stay in a certain area of elevation, let's say between 2,000 and 3,000 meters recorded only, because this is the most suitable habitat, but the mountain ridge only reach 3,000 meters, we cannot climb higher. This is a problem. Which probably can also caused by an accidental transferring.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So if you have maybe so firewood is not much used in the Kathmandu Valley, because everybody using gas or all these things. But in former times you have this regular transport of logged wood, to the fireplaces, and this could be that also cobras were accidentally because they're hiding before the trucks left the place in the southern, and this can be transported also to this location. And if they found a suitable habitat with enough food, they can stay here and can distribute it. But I want to come back for an example for the major threats of the species. One good example would be the population of Himalayophis tibetanus onthulchoki. This is the 5th species we forgot of pit vipers. So we have 5. At the moment, this species is recorded within the Kathmandu Valley only from Pulchoki. And on Pulchoki, as is recorded only between 2,650 and 2,900 meters. And as far as I remember, the peak is 2,950 or nearly to 3,000. So if a global warming continues in this fast speed, there are only a few years that the species has to go near to the top, and when it ends, and when the climate further changes so fast. So there is no possibility for this species to go higher, and it's only a question of time when the suitable habitat for this species will completely disappear. And when they get at least at full shocky, they will get extinct at one point. Extensive fieldwork and sampling and a good collection-based research, conservation of species is probably impossible. Because if you don't know what's living in your country, you don't know what you have to conserve. So the more species you will find in a certain region which is not protected now, which gives you the power to protect the region.
That's it.
And you have this, and then you have arguments for the politics, yeah, to invest to protect the region. Of course, this have to be balanced with the native people, so they should have the access to the environment which they have developed over hundreds of years. So you cannot simply say you have to leave the place because we want to implement a conservation area. So it have to be balanced, and all parties have to be invited and included in the project. Otherwise, it would not working. So actually, you have already some very prophilic young researchers who are specialized in herpetology. During this trip, I met two of them, and I was very happy to see how good is their knowledge for the ecology of a species. They had a lot of field experience until now, and I would really appreciate if they don't stop with work that they already done. Try to keep the contact to some specialist of certain groups, and always try to make collaboration with other colleagues, maybe from India, from China, and from other countries outside of Nepal, to get some training and some special techniques, maybe not only in morphology, but also in ecology and in genetics. This is a difficult question for me because it could be sound some arrogant, but no. Actually, in case of Nepal, we had a joint project. It was a team of herpetologists and toxicologists from Switzerland, from Germany, and from Nepal. It was published in 2013 as a non-profit project, and we published a booklet about the venomous snakes of Nepal. It was published in two different editions, and a Nepalese one and an English one, and was distributed freely to schools. I even take, during my visits, copies of his books to the Casco region and presented it to some schools, to the teacher, that they have the possibility to teach the use and the danger of venomous snakes in Nepal. And up to now, so we uploaded these books on the online platform ResearchGate, and up to now, this book has near to 90,000 reads. So every week at least 200 or 300 people read this book online, and many of them are Nepalese. And the Nepalese are not only scientists; these are very people which has only interest in nature. So which are not all herpetologists. For now, I don't know any example of a herpetological publication of South Asia which has such an interest arose in this ResearchGate platform.
Because people are reading your
Yeah.
journal in ResearchGate.
They simply Google about snakes, so they simply added the term snakes of Nepal, and they were transferred also to this web page and can read the whole book online with a description of Nepalese venomous snakes. And these were now nearly 90,000. That's a lot.
That's an impactful contribution.
Impactful because it's a very, very special topic. Yeah, and usually, so the normal people has not much interest in snakes because they usually have developed, of course, a fear, and especially on venomous snakes. That's why it's very surprising that this got so much interest.
Because it's good for the young researchers.
Yes,
Like
yes, of course.
It's a very useful place
Yeah.
to learn
Yeah,
about
yeah,
your
yeah.
journals.
And it's freely accessible for everybody, not only for zoologists or not only for biologists, or for everyone accessible. So I started the professional career in herpetology as a collection manager in 2009 in the Museum of Natural History in Berlin. So actually, my day job is fully packed only with curational work and all these things which are added to it at the site, like guiding of the visitors and all this stuff related to the collections. Field work is exclusively done during my vacation, privately financed, and with the results, if there are sometimes it takes 10 years to get everything probably together. So I will do this usually in my spare time. Yeah, so the balance is between work and holiday, which is always, for me at least, and for my wife, also a big part of work.
That's nice. So, how long you plan to work as a herpetologist? How long? I mean,
It will never stop.
it's not going to stop.
Because it's a passion of me. Snakes are a passion of me, especially snakes of Asia, with most interest in the snakes of South Asia and the Himalayan region. That's why probably I will never stop research on snakes of this region.
That's a good answer.
And I'm really happy to give my experience to the young generation in Nepal, which has a keen interest in all these reptiles and snakes of their own country, of their home country.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the invitation to this interview.